Greetings, youngsters. This is Randy Jimmy James Bowles broadcasting from Seattle, Washington. I'm enjoying my chai. And by the way, never say chai tea, because as any European will tell you, that's like saying tea tea. Just chai will do. And as you can see, this is my Beatles cup. A fan gave it to me 10 years ago. He liked my music, and he gave this to me in an attractive gift box. Now, it's got one little ding right here, but I'm not going to throw it away. Would you throw something away like this because it has one ding in it? Because if you would, well, you might as well throw me away too. I've got a few dings. Anyway, this is one of my secrets for how I'm able to make these epic marathon videos and still be able to speak. Chai. Now, as you can see, the top of my head is cut off, but that's because I want you to be able to see my peace symbol, and everything doesn't fit into the frame. The reason I want you to see this peace symbol is because I've got another one right here on my chest. You see, I'm playing the part of a hippie today. I'm a beatnik, not an old hippie. I'm playing an old hippie. But luckily I was able to shop my closet for my hippie garb for you. And this is, it's hard to see, I know, that's Pooh. Or I think it's Tigger, actually, from the Pooh stories, inside of a peace symbol. And I thought, and it's from 1995. That's right. Very soon after Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, who passed away, very shortly after he passed away, a guy pulled up at the Fremont Sunday Market with a truckload of tie-dyes he'd made himself. And I still have two from 1995. And I'm wearing the peace symbol to go along with this one so that we have some synchronicity going, or a theme. And the peace symbol itself, I purchased in 1969. That is the true story. Now, let's get going with the story that I'm going to tell you that's from my blog. I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to my blog right now, and I'm going to read it to you. It's all about going to see the Grateful Dead for the first time and getting stoned for the first time. It's called Two Yakima Boys' First Dead Show, An Outsider's Tale. One notable day in January of 1968, while living in the isolated, unhip town where I attempted to grow up, Yakima, Washington, I found a Seattle newspaper in the employee lunchroom at my job. While I was scanning it, a blurb in the weekend section caught my eye. It was a preview of what sounded like a great Eagles Auditorium concert in Seattle, one which would happen in just a few days. San Francisco's Grateful Dead and Quicksilver Messenger Service would trade sets, while Jerry Abrams' stunning headlights presented an accompanying light show. I called my best friend, Karl Baker, and we immediately agreed to go to the show. We'd heard about both bands, but we weren't familiar with their material. We just instinctively knew it would be the show, and we had to go. In those times, one could buy a ticket to a big show on the day of, and that was our plan. Back then, there were no worries about ordering tickets months in advance. On the morning of the big show, Carl picked me up in his late 50s Volkswagen bus, which we'd spent months lovingly restoring. The bus, newly painted fire engine red, and we were very specific with the paint shop, fire engine red, sported a white top and bumpers. It was a rolling work of art. It stood out in Yakima like, two young guys with long hair. Considering the occasion, you could say it was a true dead sled, for we were taking to the road to see the Grateful Dead. Blessed with good traveling weather for January, we had a wonderful drive through the awe-inspiring Ellensburg Canyon, over the Cascade Mountains, and on into Seattle. We spied a beautiful old hotel that looked promising called the Mayflower. We got ourselves a room. We then walked through the busy downtown Seattle streets to the Eagles Auditorium, having to ask directions a couple of times, as we had never seen the Eagles. When we arrived at the beautiful old building, we were each given a handbill designed by George Hunter, advertising the concert. Now, I kept that handbill for years and years, but sadly, before I came to realize that all of this was going to be of some significance in the future, today for instance, I mindlessly tossed it away. We were happy but not surprised to see that tickets were still available, and we each scored one for under $5. Karl said, "Well, now we have to get some weed." There just happened to be hippies everywhere, unlike in Yakima. So after inquiring of 4 or 5 people, we wound up buying some weed, offered to us in an old cottage cheese container for about $2. Karl had been introduced to marijuana smoking in 1967 at Shimer College in Illinois. He was used to getting stoned, and I, on the other hand, had never been stoned. I'd sampled some wild roadside Illinois weed Karl brought back from Shimer, but I'd failed to achieve liftoff. We took our purchase back to our hotel, stashed it, and went to Ivar's Acres of Clams for dinner. There was no Ivar's in Yakima, Washington. But Seattle, yes. Walking down to the waterfront and ordering Ivar's fish and chips was a super rare event. Now, my parents and Ivar were good friends in the 1940s, so it was ironic that I was deprived of his fare. And by the way, I've blogged about that. My parents' friendship with Ivar. You can go to my WordPress blog and find that. After our tasty Seattle feast, we returned to our hotel room. And regarding the Mayflower, it was an aging but still beautiful hotel. This was pre-restoration, but it was to me fabulous, nothing like anything I'd seen back home. We then did what any careful small-town kids would do. We plugged up the space between the door and the floor with Mayflower Hotel bath towels. Then Karl rolled a big fatty. Never mind that his Illinois weed previously failed to get me high. This stuff worked. I was high for the first time in my life. There was no doubt in my mind. There was a lot in my mind, but no doubt. And Karl was obviously feeling quite grand. We were set, so we proceeded to walk, or rather float, from the hotel to the Eagles. When we walked into the building, we had a trippy journey up the ramp that led to the auditorium. Somewhere along the ramp, perhaps at a landing, cool hippie people were selling incense for about 10 cents a stick. The atmosphere was, as they say, that of a carnival. We walked in, found ourselves a place on the floor, and I tell you, we spent the next several hours in another world. The music, the lights, the people, the beautiful ballroom, the fragrance of 10 varieties of incense being burned simultaneously. It was all too much, overwhelming, mind-bending, and life-changing. I'd never seen nor heard such a thing. The truly psychedelic guitar playing was the best ever. I mean ever. As for the light show, I had never experienced a light show, so to encounter Jerry Abrams' headlights was incredible. And remember, I was stoned for the first time. Well, I danced with hippie girls, under the strobe lights, under the black lights. The songs seemed to be a half an hour long. I alternated between dancing and just lying on the floor, letting the entire scene soak into my little Yakima brain. As I say, the experience was transformational. But after several hours, Karl and I looked at each other and said, "Let's go." Our cups were profoundly overflowing. More was not needed. More would be too much. So we left the crazy crowd, the lights, the pounding psychedelic music behind, and returned to our room. Getting the key back from the desk clerk was difficult. Yes, we were so naive that we turned in the key every time we came and went. But we were so very high and dealing with a figure of authority, the desk clerk, took great effort. I guess you would say that was my first experience at what's called maintaining. Well, after a good night's sleep, we checked out, making sure to return our key to the desk clerk. We ravenously ate a huge breakfast at a downtown eatery. Then we traveled home to eastern Washington, arriving as changed individuals. And now the kicker. Karl and I were so green, so new to the scene, so unfamiliar with both bands that while at the show, we never did know who was the Grateful Dead and who was Quicksilver Messenger Service. Peace and love, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my little Yakima hippie tale just for you. Thank you so much. I'll see you again in the very near future. If I don't see you in the future, I'll see you in the pasture.